My husband left me for his younger coworker but came crawling back to me once I got in shape and found someone else to marry. English is my second language, so sorry in advance. This happened in 2010, 12 years ago when I was 30. My husband, 43M, and I, 42F, were high school sweethearts, never having been separated. I always thought we would be one of those couples who stay together forever, having known each other since childhood. But I was really wrong. At that time, I was pregnant with my daughter, Ava. I discovered that my husband was cheating on me with one of his co-workers, the mistress, 33F. I confronted him about it, and he broke down, apologizing. He went from asking for forgiveness to blaming me for the affair, citing my lack of attention as the cause. My emotions were all over the place. I broke down when he told me he loved that co-worker, who was an intern at the time and significantly younger than I am. I tried to save my marriage, but my husband was adamant about leaving me. My dad cheated on my mom when I was younger, and I still feel crushed because of that. That's why I didn't want my daughter to suffer the same fate. At that time, I also didn't have a job. I begged him to stay and work it out, suggesting therapy, but he refused. So, we got divorced after a year and he moved in with his mistress. During our divorce, I experienced early labor and gave birth to my daughter. He didn't even come to the hospital. The custody was 50-50, but for the first few months, my daughter would stay with me, and he would come to visit. I moved in with my mom and stepdad, who were more than welcoming. Whenever my husband would come, he would bring his mistress with him too. Seeing them together really pained my heart. It didn't help when he would deliberately adjust his collar to show off his hickey. The only thing that prevented me from spiraling into heavy depression was my mom. I hated myself because I looked really exhausted. I thought I looked ugly. Every time I saw my husband with his mistress, I burned with jealousy. I could sometimes see the disgust on his face, as if he was glad to drop a hag like me. For the first 2 years, it was like this. I lost a lot of weight and looked pale. After 2 years of sulking and feeling sorry for myself, I started to change my ways of life. I made a promise that I would work on myself and give my daughter the best life she needs. So, I started therapy and changed my eating habits. I started working out, and somehow I felt less anxious. I started to look healthier than before. I decided to get a job, and my life took a different direction. I was still staying with my parents to afford a small house for me and my daughter. When my daughter was 4, in 2014, I moved out. It was small but enough for the two of us. During that time, my ex started to notice me. One day, when he came to pick up my daughter, he told me, "You look good." It was something he had never said to me before. I almost broke my composure at that time, but I was still hurt because he made me go through something really painful for his own selfishness. So, I decided that I wanted to play with his mind for a while. The next time he came to pick up his daughter, I smiled. I was cordial and invited him in so that he could take some of my daughter's stuff. He was also weirded out by the smile. I did that every time we would run into each other. He was pretty confused by it, so he finally asked me why I was smiling. I sat him down and said, "Look, as much as I hate seeing you on a daily basis, even though we are divorced, you are still the father of my daughter. My daughter is already growing up in a broken home where mommy and daddy don't live together, and she has to switch homes every weekend. I don't want her to grow up in an environment where her mom and dad cannot be cordial. I have a father who cheated on my mom and tried to alienate me from her. It nearly destroyed me. I don't want that for her. So, that's why I want to be nice to you. Maybe someday we will reach the point where we will be cordial and very cooperative co-parents despite our differences." He went speechless. I could see the colors flying off his face. From that day on, I was nice to him. He would always give an awkward smile. Sometimes I would mess with him by wearing a dress that is of his favorite color. Other times, I would make his favorite cookies or food and he would ask me what that smell was. I liked seeing him weak in front of me. It gave me power at that time. This went on for a few months. When Christmas arrived that year, I invited him to dinner because my daughter wanted to spend it with both her parents. Needless to say, he brought his girlfriend with him. I could see that she holds anger against me. I was not rude to her, but she was really hostile to me for the entire evening. She would get jealous every time my ex-husband and I tried to have a conversation. I was not trying to be closer to him, I kept my distance. At the end of the evening, I gave them both a gift. I gave my husband the watch that he always wanted. That was the first time I saw him smile at me genuinely. I did give his girlfriend a gift too, which was a pair of earrings. She was not happy. She asked him if they could leave sooner. The next day, my ex called me, yelling that I was trying to manipulate him back into my life.
What ordinary skill becomes suspicious if you're good at it? I had a record as a kid, used to break into cars and homes into my late teens. As I grew older, if someone locked themselves out of the house, I would help them out. I'm now a grown man, work in pharmaceuticals, and I look like a typical nerd. Boss tells us on the phone he's locked out of his house and can't get a locksmith. I told him if I come down there, pick his lock and get him inside, can I get the day off? He laughs and says, sure.